The era we are living in today is a dream come true. Walt Disney. Hello everyone, thanks for listening to Dis-connected, an unofficial Disney podcast of magical proportions. I'm Whit Laxton, your Disney enthusiast host, and coming up...
It just made such a huge impact, and I don't think that the animation industry would be what it is today without that movie.
Our journey through the history of Disney animation begins with a special Dis-cussion on the era known as the Golden Age. The movies of this era are just absolute treasures. This is Disney animation history, the Golden Age. Hey guys, what's up? It's Whit, back for another episode of Dis-connected, along with my friend and fellow Disney enthusiast, Katie Carter, who is joining me via Skype. Hey, Katie!
Hey, Whit!
So, Katie, we are kicking off a 6-part series of podcasts today in which we will be talking about the unofficial eras of Disney animation. We're going to talk about the history of the films from each era. We're going to talk about the cultural impact they've had. We're going to share some fun facts about these movies, and we're also going to share some personal memories we have related to all of them as well. So, I think this is going to be a lot of fun. How about you?
Yeah, I'm excited. I love film history. That's my thing. So
Yeah, me too. Especially for me, Disney film history. But, because this is a special series, I'm kind of thinking that, it wouldn't hurt to reintroduce ourselves as Disney fans, because we could potentially have people who stumble across this particular set of podcasts for whatever reason, and maybe they've never listened to any of the other episodes we've done. So let's just briefly introduce ourselves and talk about how and why we have a love for Disney. So you can go first, then I'll go. So
okay, well, again, I'm Katie Carter, and I really started to love Disney kind of like right after high school. I loved it my whole life, but that's when I really got interested in it and became fascinated, especially with the animation processes. So I actually ended up majoring in 2D animation in college. So I did that, and then I went on and did the Disney College program at Disneyland, and I did PhotoPass photography there for a little bit.
So yeah, big Disney fan for sure.
Definitely.
Yeah. And I'm Whit. I think I've been a huge Disney fan pretty much my entire life. As far as I can remember, I knew very early on in life the difference between, this is a Disney movie, this is not a Disney movie. I just remember always knowing that. And yeah, I've always loved Disney movies. The parks have just always been a place, it's been a favorite family vacation for me, and Disney is what I keep up with. I know some people keep up with sports and that sort of thing. I've always just kept up with Disney, and with the online Disney fandom that there is, it makes it even more fun now, really. But I love Walt Disney Animation, so I'm very excited to sort of take this journey. And now that we have introduced and at least accredited ourselves as Disney fans, I guess. We're not like certified Disney experts or historians or anything, but let's go ahead and jump into our first era discussion, Katie. Dis-cussion, I should say. And today we are talking about the golden age of Disney animation. So we are about to hit the true classics. Are you ready?
I am ready.
Okay, awesome. Now, this era began in 1937 with Snow White and the Seven Dwarfs, the first full-length animated film ever, and then it continued through 1942 with Pinocchio, Fantasia, Dumbo, and Bambi all being released during that short period of time. And I think it's safe to say that the movies of this era are just absolute treasures of not only Walt Disney Animation, but and not only animation history, but just film history in general. Would you agree?
Oh yeah, definitely. I mean, I think especially like with Snow White, if you were going to pick like say 5 movies from all of the movies ever made that were the most important films, that would just have to be in there. It just made such a huge impact, and I don't think that the animation industry would be what it is today without that movie.
Right. And it's among the list, or one of the most recent lists I've seen of the American Film Institute's, 100 greatest movies of all time. It's always been on that list, it seems like. And yeah, so there's a lot for us to talk about with each of those movies, but let's back up a bit first, though, and talk about pre-Golden Age Walt Disney Animation for just a second. And this would be the time frame of the 1920s and most of the 30s, which was before Walt Disney started making full-length animated features. And so he and his animators were only making shorts at this time. And, when I say by only making shorts, I mean Academy Award-winning shorts, groundbreaking animated shorts. So yeah, some good stuff there. But that's pre-Golden Age. We're talking about the Laugh-O-Gram shorts that Walt made at his studio in Kansas City, which was like the Laugh-O-Gram studio. And he was doing, a lot of fairy tales. And that was really the early 20s, except they moved to Los Angeles in 1923 he and Roy to make the Disney Brothers cartoon studios. And that's when they started making the Alice comedies. Now, I know you're a big Alice in Wonderland fan, so do you have anything special to say about the Alice comedies?
I mean, I think that they're interesting. I mean, they don't relate too much to Alice in Wonderland, but it is interesting to see Disney's interest that he had in that story so early on, because of course that became huge later on in the studio. But yeah, I love his reason for making them kind of as a response to another really popular cartoon series by the Fleischer Brothers, where they had a 2D character that was interacting with live action people, and Disney was like, well, I could do something like that, but put a live action person into an animated world. So I think that whole process is really neat.
Yeah, because if you've never seen any clips of these Alice comedies, it's a mixing of live action and animation, which he didn't do. He did that then, but he didn't come back and do it for a long time after that. So it's interesting to see that he was doing that, and that was some fun info that you threw out there for sure. And so yeah, the Alice comedies were kind of his start out here, or out in Los Angeles. But then by the mid-20s, that's when we got Oswald the Lucky Rabbit, which was kind of before Mickey Mouse. That was thought to be, I'm sure Walt thought that was his character, and he was actually asked to make that character by his distributor through Universal Studios, I believe. Correct me if I'm wrong on this.
That's right.
But yeah, and so then there came a time when Walt didn't want to decrease the price for his Oswald the Lucky Rabbit cartoons. And so his distributor just said, well, you don't own the copyright here. They're mine. He took all of Walt's animators, and that was in New York City. And so Walt, on a train ride back to Los Angeles from that meeting, he just, he was crushed by losing Oswald. But that's when he thought up Mickey Mouse and was like, it's going to be better than anything.
Yeah, I think that you summed it up correctly to my knowledge. Yeah. I've heard him say different things about like how he came up with Mickey Mouse. Like I've heard that he thought of him as way back as when he was in the studio in Kansas City and there were mice in the studio. So, I don't really know what the true thing is there, but I think it's safe to say it's sad what happened with Oswald, and it took so long for that character to come back to the company. But I think if that hadn't happened, we would not have had Mickey. So
yeah. And probably a better character, really, though, Mickey.
They have similarities, but they're pretty different, too. Oswald's a lot more prankstery, rambunctious. Mickey kind of started out that way, but then he changed.
And Mickey's relatable, I think.
Yeah, I think so.
And a fun fact about that, he was, of course, originally going to be named Mortimer, but Walt's wife didn't like that name, so she suggested Mickey, and then it became Mickey Mouse. And Mickey Mouse was kind of an overnight sensation, really. And there were some shorts made. Steamboat Willie was kind of the big sensation for Mickey Mouse, and from what I've known, I know that movie theaters and distributors didn't want to play Steamboat Willie or anything, and then one theater in New York took him up on playing it, and it was a big hit, and Mickey just became a pop culture phenomenon.
Yeah, I mean, and that short is really significant because it was the first animated short that had synchronized sound.
With sound. Yeah.
So that's really important. And there were actually two Mickey shorts that they had made prior to Steamboat Willie, but I don't believe that they were actually released until after Steamboat Willie was released. And then they added sound to those as well. So.
Because that was around the time that, like, talkies were happening. So, yeah. And so Mickey Mouse, huge hit. And then, of course, as the years went on, we got to meet more of Mickey's friends. We got to meet the Fab Five and other characters with Minnie and Goofy and Donald and Daisy and, Pluto. And it's really fun to see now because, I don't know, I'm assuming most of those shorts that were made in the 20s and 30s have been kept in the vault all these years. But Turner Classic Movies has been showing a lot of them in the recent, probably for about a year now, it seems like.
I think a little over a year, yeah. It seems like they've been doing it like every other month. They have a night where they'll show, a variety of older films from like the shorts to documentaries to live action and animated features and all kinds of good stuff that you don't normally get to see.
Yeah. And it's been really fun to watch those shorts. I remember one that I just thought was really fun was like where they went to the beach, and I don't remember the name of it, but it was one that I caught with the original Fab Five characters. So fun stuff there, though. And as time went on in the 30s, a series got started called Silly Symphonies, which were these shorts that included music. And that was when Walt started winning Academy Awards there. And do you have any that you want to talk about? I know that one that a lot of people remember is The Three Little Pigs, for sure.
Yeah, that one kind of became a sensation because of the music, and the song Who's Afraid of the Big Bad Wolf just became really, really popular. So I remember that one. I think the Silly Symphonies are so important because that was really kind of a testing ground for them to try out all of these new techniques. So you have like Flowers and Trees from 1932. That was the first full color cartoon. And then that was the first year also that the Academy introduced the, best animated short category. So one for that. You have the Multiplane Camera with the Old Mill in 1937. So just all of these different things that they were kind of able to work on that eventually led up to them being able to make Snow White.
And that is where we are headed next. We are heading into the Golden Age, which is when Walt Disney decided he wanted to make a full-length animated movie. It had never been done before. No one had any faith in this actually becoming a reality, and he made it happen. He actually had to bring in like a banker, right? He
had to mortgage his house, yeah.
Yeah, but to come and like watch some of the movie where it was like, I promise, like it's worth loaning me the money here. I promise it's going to be worth it to get that movie made. And it was released on December 21st, 1937, right before Christmas. I've always heard that they were like right up to their deadline of that day, getting it finished. But I can't imagine, imagine what people were thinking because they'd never seen anything like this, and no one thought that anyone would sit through a 90-minute cartoon as people would have thought of it as. But Walt wasn't thinking, oh, this is a cartoon. And one of the things I always wind up sometimes watching some old At the Movies, Roger Ebert and Gene Siskel. I watched some of their old movie reviews on YouTube. And for a re-release of Snow White and the Seven Dwarfs, one thing that really stuck with me that Roger Ebert said in that review, he said that Snow White and the Seven Dwarfs is it's not a kids movie or it's nothing like that. It is a movie, and that just says it all to me. Like, it is a movie.
Yeah, I mean, and to think that, they were able to provoke so much emotion in the audiences using drawings versus, live action actors. I think that's the main thing. And when you look at some of the Silly Symphony shorts that they had done before that had people in them, the animation was not realistic to how humans move. It's very, rubber hosey, I guess is how you'd call it, where they just kind of move like they don't have any joints. So, with this movie, that's where Walt really started bringing in actors and having the animators really study movement and all of that so they could make it as realistic as possible. And they just killed it. It's amazing.
Yeah. Huge success. I mean, just millions of dollars that it made. I think 8 million, I want to say.
It was the when it was released, it was the highest grossing film of all time. And that lasted for about 2 years until Gone with the Wind came out. But yeah.
Look at you with that knowledge there, Katie. Film history knowledge. You want to talk a little bit about the story of Snow White, of course, based on a classic fairy tale?
Yeah, it's based on a fairy tale by the Grimm brothers, and basically, follows Snow White, who's a serving girl. She works in the castle where her evil stepmother lives. Stepmother has a magic mirror, and it always tells her that she's the fairest one of all until one day it doesn't, and it says that Snow White is.
Yeah, and just sorry to interrupt, but
No,
the line is not mirror, mirror on the wall. It's magic mirror on the wall. Who's the fairest of them all?
That's true. One of those misquoted lines, yeah. But so she hires a huntsman to go kill Snow White for her, and he just can't go through with it. So she runs off in the woods and, meets up with the seven dwarves, and of course eventually ends up with her prince and all of that. So, I mean, it's like the essential fairy tale, really. Like, it's got all of the elements that you would expect from this kind of story, and it works. It never feels cliched or anything. It's just perfect.
Artistically fantastic, but some great music in the film as well, with Hi Ho and Whistle While You Work. Someday My Prince Will Come. I'm Wishing. The Princess song is one song. That's a great one too. So... And then, the evil queen. Oh, my goodness.
She's so
scary. Scared me so much as a kid. The hag is just the scariest thing. And I remember at Walt Disney World when I was a really little kid, they had a character of her. And I don't know why my parents thought it would be okay for me to go try to meet her, but it was not. I was so scared. And I don't eat apples. I do not like apples. Number one, one reason I'm weird about food textures, but another reason, Snow White. I mean, hello.
That's a little extreme, but okay.
Okay.
No, I mean, I remember going to Disney World when I was really little, and of course that's when they still had the Snow White Scary Adventures ride. And I closed my eyes that entire ride. I mean, there's I think it was the part where the stepmother turns into the witch and she turns around or something and you see her change. I don't remember exactly, but that freaked me out.
Ugh,
and then we went back there when I was a teenager and it freaked me out again. So
I mean, Snow White and the Seven Dwarfs, that's a scary movie.
It is.
I'm sorry, it is.
I mean, the scene where she's running through the woods too.
Of course, comic relief, though, with the Seven Dwarfs. Name the Seven Dwarfs. Go, Katie, go.
Dopey, Sleepy, Bashful, Doc. That's a lot of pressure, okay? I already forgot what I said. You do it.
Okay. Bashful, Sneezy, Sleepy, Dopey, Doc. Oh, no. Grumpy, and Sneezy. Did I do Sneezy?
I think you did.
Oh no!
Did you say Sleepy?
Okay. Bashful, Dopey, Doc, Sneezy, Sleepy, Grumpy. Which one did I not say? I don't know. Okay, fail. But anyway, I think somewhere in there we might have gotten them all. I don't know. So, but that is always a fun thing to do. Is like, hey, can you name the seven dwarfs? But definitely a great comic relief for a movie that is scary. It really is. And it was interesting how Walt was very specific, and the animators were very specific about giving them all a distinct personality.
Yeah, I think I remember studying in school the scene where all of the dwarves are walking across the log during the hi-ho sequence. And that took so long for them to animate because every single character has a different walk that shows their personality. So, I mean, they just really did a great job on the character animation with that.
A huge success with Snow White and the Seven Dwarfs, truly like the fairest of them all. And as we mentioned earlier, just a true staple in film history, not just Walt Disney Animation, not just animation history, but film history. This movie is so important. And anyway, we will move on to the next film in the era, unless there's anything else you have to say about Snow White, Katie.
I think Snow White was the first movie I saw in the theater.
Oh, really? For a re-release?
Yeah, there was a 1993 re-release, so that must have been what I saw, but I do have vague memories of that happening. So.
Cool. Snow White and the Seven Dwarfs, 1937, followed up in 1940 by Pinocchio. Are you a fan of Pinocchio, Katie?
I am, yeah. It's, I think, one of the most beautiful animated films ever. And that one's beautiful. It's known not so much for the character animation as like the effects animation.
Yeah, the technicality of it.
Yeah, like the water and all of that. It's just really beautiful. And it was not a hit when it was first released, but it was a critical hit, and it, I think, continues to be, recognized by people as one of the greatest animated movies ever made.
Yeah. Do you want to kind of discuss the plot a little bit? It's based on a book.
Yes, it is. Basically follows toy maker, I guess he is, Geppetto. He makes a puppet called Pinocchio, and Pinocchio comes to life, and all he wants to do is become a real boy. So he goes on this journey, and it's been a while since I've watched it.
Me too. But of course, the blue fairy comes in and turns him not into a real boy, but brings him to life as a puppet, and then he sort of wanders off away from Geppetto and goes on this epic adventure and meets all of these fun characters. And again, just back to how amazing the animation is in this movie. I always hear, whenever I'm watching behind the scenes, specials or bonus features on more recent animated movies, they always talk about how they went back to look at things done in Pinocchio. And we were talking about the technicality of it all, but so obviously a beautiful animated success and critical success, maybe not so much of a financial success when it was originally released. Culturally, though, just as important, the song of the movie, "When You Wish Upon a Star," I mean, it's like considered, it's the Disney song, really.
Pretty much, yeah. And Jiminy Cricket, he's kind of everywhere. He's one of those iconic Disney characters for sure.
He's there with Mickey and Tinkerbell, I would
think
say.
So, yeah.
And then, of course, some other songs. I've Got No Strings. That's a fun one. And lots of fun, a few fun characters in there. And yeah, anything else that we should talk about with Pinocchio?
I don't know. It's kind of a bizarre and dark movie, really, from what I remember. There are some weird sequences in there.
I need to go back and watch that one.
I do too.
Awesome stuff there with Pinocchio. It was released February 7th, 1940. And that same year is actually when Fantasia was released. And like Pinocchio, not the biggest financial success. I think it was kind of a flop, really. But of course, it's kind of a package film almost. It's different segments of animation put to different musical pieces, symphony pieces, and I think it all began with the idea of Walt wanting to do The Sorcerer's Apprentice, which was a musical poem thing that he, I guess, liked, and he wanted to use Mickey Mouse as the sorcerer, which ended up being probably the most iconic part of Fantasia. But then he met with like this musical director, and it sort of became more than just a Sorcerer's Apprentice short. It became Fantasia. So
Yeah, I mean, I love Fantasia. Just the it's so experimental, and I love how they went and did that kind of movie. That's just not something that's really done anymore. Where they took pieces of music and then created all of these animated pieces around them. Yeah, I love the variety of characters and little stories they have in there. The music is beautiful. In between each animated segment, they go back and you see the live action orchestra, which is kind of interesting. Yeah, I think that it wasn't so much a financial success because they lost so much money creating a new sound system.
right, this was the
around
first surround sound.
Yeah, I think they call it a Fantasound. But yeah, it was like a form of surround sound, and that had to be installed in different places where they were showing the movie, and that just ended up really costing them a lot more money than it was worth, I think. So,
And they didn't even show it in too many theaters because of the expense, or because of that. I remember watching it as a kid and not really getting it. Like, okay, like they're not talking, it's just music. And then when I got to middle school, we actually like studied Fantasia in my music class with this music teacher who at the time I was not a fan of. Now I look back on it and think that he really like gave us a good foundation on music history. But I just remember we had to like take notes on the movie, and he would like pause it and like tell us like, oh, this is the significance of this, and this is, what this is all about. So that was kind of an interesting time for me to sort of learn a lot more about Fantasia and the music that was featured. And I know Walt wanted to have it be something that was re-released every year or every few years with like new segments added, which is not something that happened until, I guess, Fantasia 2000. So, which was years later. But
yeah, I didn't really watch Fantasia too closely until it came out on Blu-ray, I think, a while back. It was like in a combo thing with Fantasia 2000, and that was when I was still in school and I was studying animation. So I was really, really very interested in watching that movie closely and seeing the way that they did everything. So
it's a good one, and it was really sort of a risk. So, and I think within film history, it definitely paid off. Sorcerer Mickey is sort of an iconic figure, and of course we have Fantasmic at the parks, which is great. But any other thoughts on that? I know that the night on Bald Mountain always really scared me a little bit.
that is scary, yeah.
Chernabog, right? Yeah.
Yeah, I love the Nutcracker Suite sequence. I think that's probably my favorite, just because I've always loved the music and the way that they did the animation with that. It's really, really beautiful. Some nice effect animation and character animation.
Well, cool stuff for Fantasia there. Again, not a huge financial success. So the next movie that, the Walt Disney Company had to make had to be a little bit cheaper, to make the cut there. And that film was Dumbo. I know that it was a very cheap film to make. It's a very short movie, but oh my goodness, I love Dumbo. It was released on October 23rd, 1941. And yeah, you want to talk about what that movie's all about, Katie?
I don't remember too much of Dumbo, but it is about an elephant, circus elephant, who is born with overly large ears and has trouble fitting in. But when you think about how it was really only made to make money, it's a very good movie still.
Yeah, just to have, been made for that reason. It is like, I didn't think about it so much as a kid, but when I've watched it in recent, memory, it's, oh my goodness. a tearjerker. The scene with the mom, and the mom is protecting him, and she gets put in, I don't know, circus jail. I don't know. She gets locked up and can't be with Dumbo anymore. Her name's Mrs. Jumbo. And like Baby Mine, which is the song, and she's just rocking him and like holding onto his trunk. And that is the saddest thing. Oh my goodness. Like thinking about it makes me emotional.
It'll be okay.
Okay, thanks. Yeah. Yeah, a really short movie, a really fun movie. You've got Baby Mine for the music, and I be done seeing about everything when I see an elephant fly. A little bit of accusations of racism with the crows there, but there's also been film historians say other things about it. But there's a lot of racism throughout Disney animated history.
I mean, yeah, there is just from that era of film in general. It's just kind of the way the mindset was then.
Yeah. It is what it is, I guess. But yeah, Dumbo, a really fun movie. Of course, really one of the most iconic rides at Disney, at Disney Park would be Dumbo the Flying Elephant, which is a really fun, to ride. It's not like a roller coaster or anything, but it's like the one you've got to ride. You've got to ride Dumbo. So because he does learn how to fly, or he does end up flying with his big ears. Spoiler, I don't know. Some fun facts about Dumbo. He was supposed to be on the cover of Time magazine. So, obviously like he was a huge success. But then
Pearl
Harbor happened and took that over. And so yeah. Ready to move on to the next movie? Yeah, okay. So 1942 brought us the last movie of this era, and that was Bambi.
I love Bambi. Yay.
Another really simple story, though. It's, about a fawn who is the prince of the forest, and he meets lots of different little animals, like Thumper the rabbit and Flower the skunk, and his dad is the king of the forest, but we don't really see much of a relationship between Bambi and his father. We see a relationship between Bambi and his mother at the beginning of the movie. And then, even worse than Dumbo, Baby Mine, we have the tragedy. And, this is, again, just a historic moment of film history. I mean, there's so many, this is referenced so much, and we talk about how sad it is, but the death of Bambi's mom being shot by Man, that's the villain of this movie is Man. It's so like gut-wrenching, and I don't even think as a kid it really registered to me that that's what happened, I guess. But yeah, so then Bambi is his father steps in, and he grows up to become the prince, the king, of the forest. And it's a beautiful story and a beautiful movie. And I think the significant part of it was that Walt was trying to make something that was really realistic with the nature that they animated here.
Yeah, I mean, I love how they were able to achieve that realism, but they're still, very recognizable as cartoon characters, as far as their facial features and everything of the animals. But the way that they move and everything. And again, the animators really studied and went to zoos, and they brought deer into the studio, and, they would draw them and watch how they moved. And, yeah, I think, and it's interesting, I don't think that critically it was a huge success upon its release because it was so realistic, and people were like, well, now Disney's getting away from these fantasies, and this doesn't really work as well for animation, but it does work. It's amazing to watch.
Yeah, definitely. And the multiplane camera came in there to help with the visuals on that. Do you want to talk about the multiplane camera? I feel like you probably have a little bit more knowledge about it than I do. It's hard to explain, but
they used it on Snow White as well. But basically, it's like this huge. I don't even know how to describe it, but it's like very, very tall. I've actually seen. I was at the Disney Studios a few years ago, and they have. Of
course, you were.
They have one of the 3 surviving original Disney multiplane cameras there, and it's huge. I mean, you have to climb on a ladder to get to the top of it. But basically, they have you'd put your background down on like glass, and then you would layer all of the animated cells on top of it, and you'd be able to, you know, kind of achieve a three-dimensional look. So it's not just like a flat drawing on a flat background. You know, they have all these layers, so it feels a bit more three-dimensional, even though it is still a two-dimensional movie. And they were able to, you know, move them around on there and everything, and shoot them on that. And yeah,
Frame by frame.
yes, it's a process.
Yeah, definitely a process. So, but that was released August 13th, 1942. Fun memories for me would just be that I always called skunks as a kid. We called them flowers. So I would just be like, if we'd, you know, be driving down the road and then you smell a skunk and I'd be like, ew, flower. Like that's what we would say. And Thumper has just the greatest words of wisdom that my mom always uses, which, you know, is if you can't say something nice, don't say something at all. So, or however he words it. But yeah, those would be some fun memories. And now, as I'm a little bit older, my nephew, I think it's probably his favorite Disney movie. He loves to watch it when he's here. So, and he's a hunter, so I don't know. But anyway.
I feel like this is kind of the first, well, maybe Pinocchio was more the first one, but they kind of start bringing in more well-known voice talents to voice the characters, like Sterling Holloway, Disney legend, voices, I think it's Adult Flower in the movie. But of course, he's most well known for being the original Winnie the Pooh.
I gotcha.
And young Bambi is voiced by, I think the actor's name is Donnie Dunnigan, but he's still alive. And he appeared at the TCM Classic Film Festival this past April. They did a screening of Bambi, and he was there, and he, you know, attended and talked about the film.
And he did like a random NPR interview, like in the last few years. Remember that?
I don't remember that.
Yeah, it was like a random little NPR interview, and he was talking about how when he was in the war, he just didn't tell people or that he was Bambi or something. I don't know. You have to go look that up. But I've also always heard, and that was a cool fun fact there, but those were some cool fun facts. I've also always heard as a fun fact that Bambi was Walt Disney's favorite movie that he made, or it's believed that that was the case. So, which, you know, it definitely a technical achievement there. So, and the end of an era, really. That is kind of the end of the golden age. And before we end the episode, I do want to talk about post-golden age from 1943 to 1949. And, you know, history-wise, World War II was coming in around this time and kind of affecting the success of, like, Bambi and some of these movies of the golden era. But it definitely affected after Bambi. They were only able to make package films, which we were talking about Fantasia kind of being a package film, but that's not necessarily what I'm not talking about that here necessarily. I'm talking about like a movie of little shorts, you know, put into one production. And there are some notable ones: Saludos Amigos, The Three Caballeros, or what is it? Melody Time, Make Mine Music. The Adventure of Ichabod and Mr. Toad. So, have you seen any of those or have any thoughts on those movies?
I think I've seen all of them. I don't think I've seen Make Mine Music or I know I haven't seen that one, but I think I've seen like parts of some of them, like some of the shorts that are, because over the years a lot of the shorts have been kind of like taken from these movies and shown on their own in different
That's what I was
instances.
gonna say. Like, the way I've seen them is that they've been shown on some sort of other platform or something. Like, I don't know. But, you know, what it was, and I didn't make this clear, was that the animation studio was, like, taken over by the army. So they couldn't make, you know, movies like they were doing. And I guess the first one, Saludos Amigos or The Three Caballeros, maybe both of them were inspired by Walt Disney took a trip to South America. And so that's where those came from. And those movies are, you know, South America inspired. The Three Caballeros is probably one of the more recognizable ones there, and it was actually in the Turner Classic Movie lineup for those Disney nights, and I saw it, and it's interesting. It actually has sort of like a full storyline to it, whereas the other ones are just short after short after short. So, and then of course the Mexico Pavilion that movie has some influence there at Epcot. So
Yeah, I read somewhere that those movies did more to kind of forge an alliance between South America and North America than, any other diplomatic effort at the time. And the main reason I think why Disney was sent down there was because South America there were countries over there that were kind of having ties to Germany, and they were trying to, get them back to our side. So, so very important. They may not be like the greatest films, but they are very important, both to film history and just history in general. So
Yeah.
that's a long period of time, though, really, without a full-length animated Disney movie, 1943 to 1949. And I guess the last one, or that last year, 1949, is when the one that I've seen the most, which would be The Adventures of Ichabod and Mr. Toad. I've seen the Sleepy Hollow story. Oh, man. I used to always watch that one as a kid and just, cover my eyes, but it was so good.
it is good. Yeah, and they got some good voice talent for those. You have Bing Crosby narrated one and Basil Rathbone narrated the other. I think Bing Crosby did the
He did
Mr.
the
Toad.
Sleepy Hollow. Oh, never mind.
I don't know. I don't
thought
remember
it was
which
the
one did
other way
which. I just know that one did the other, and yeah.
That kind of wraps it up for this episode, I guess, because we are splitting this into 6 parts, and the next episode will be next week, the Silver Age. So that's going to be really fun. But yeah, I hope you've kind of enjoyed our Golden Age discussion. We also talked, pre-Golden Age and post-Golden Age, and I think we did good for the start. Katie, what do you think?
I think so. I'm glad that I remember more than I thought I did.
We got a nice little rhythm going here for sure. All right, well, thanks so much for listening to this first special Dis-connected podcast, Disney Animation History, the Golden Era. The next episode will be the Silver Era, so come back next week and listen to that. Or if you're binge listening, just keep listening to each of these episodes. Katie, thanks so much for joining me.
Thank you for having me.
Yeah, excited to continue these animation discussions with you over the next few weeks. Be sure to follow mine and Katie's social media links in the description below. Be sure to follow at Disney_connected on Instagram for more Dis-connected content. And until next time, have a magical day, and I'll see you real soon, folks.